Hi, how often can you ask in a year, ask your donors, ask them for a gift without driving them off? Do you know the answer? I do. I read the answer in 20 Questions by Tom Aherns, and the answer is 21 times a year. I'll bet you can't believe it. And you know what? I've actually put that to a test as a development director in a turnaround situation where, quite truthfully and really, I wrote about once a week a direct mail piece to our donors to keep the doors open. Truthfully, and it worked, and we went from rags to riches. All right, you know that we're talking about Tom Aherns' 20 Questions, and you know that we back up these answers, and we know that 21 times a year doesn't seem possible, does it? But look, this happened at the back in 2014 at the Storytelling Conference, and Tom Aherns was there, and he was sitting next to Jeff Brooks, who is at True Sense, one of the very best direct mail firms in the entire country. So a fundraiser in the audience asked a seemingly simple question: how often can you ask in a year without losing donors? The answer? Tom glanced at Jeff, and Jeff flashed the number 20 with his fingers. Then another fundraiser took the floor to describe a test he'd done to see what the limit was. His charity mailed 21 solicitations in a year before the gifts tapered off. Hey, and is 21 really all that intrusive? Well, it comes down to less than 2 solicitations per month. And during the U.S. presidential campaigns, wow, I'll bet you we all got more than 2 or 3 solicitations per day. So Tom says, let's be honest, over-solicitation is probably not your charity's problem. So the number is 21, even though we stand in awe of this shocking true life maximum. And you know most charities are nowhere close to that. So, in answer to the question, how many times a year should I mail my donors? Canadian expert Alan Sharp advises mail at least 8 times a year. This is good. Again, I'll say it. Mail at least 8 times a year. Mail at least 4 appeal letters, and mail at least 4 newsletters or donor cultivation, donor information type pieces. One reason that so many first-time donors do not make a second gift is under communication, not over communication. Basically, these new donors forget about you or never really form any kind of a bond with you. So don't put this advice to the back of the room. Remember this, because this is really good advice, and you want to keep your donors by your side. And if you watch their giving behavior, you'll find that they don't stop giving as a result of asking often. So I think that this is really great advice, and remember that a lot of people out there are giving to maybe 2 dozen charities a year, and they're prompted by direct mail. And some of them have been giving forever. So just remember that if you're not asking, somebody else is. So I would really heed this answer to this question. How many times can you successfully get gifts from asking your donors? All right, so let's go on. Before I leave this question, I want to mention this, something that Jeff Brooks says. He says that each appeal is different, and there's an important lesson to remember. Less mail is less giving. And that's true in nearly every situation, including your major donor. He says never assume that donors will give more or retain longer if they get less contact. It almost never works that way. Now here's important advice. Don't overreact to complaints about over-solicitation. They're very probably false alarms, and certainly don't listen to the timid amongst us who fret. We'll drive off our donors if we ask too often. While it certainly sounds reasonable, even considerate, the science says it's dead wrong. The correct view is, quote, we'll leave a lot of money on the table if we don't ask often enough, end quote. One last thing they say, and this is a misunderstanding that they say, let's be clear, when we talk about an annual fund, the word annual has nothing to do with asking just once a year. Got that? Rather, it has to do with what you're raising money for. So keep that in mind, all right? Do not worry about over-solicitation because it is the right thing to do. Okay, so let's take a look at question number 9. Are you ready? Does raising awareness of our charity, in fact, raise more money, as many assume? What do you think? Because you'll hear your board members talk about this a lot. We just need to raise awareness and up our brand so people know who we are. Guess what? The answer is no. Here are the notes and assumptions about that particular question and answer. We need to raise awareness. If only we had more visibility in our community. It doesn't matter how you say it. Neither is a substitute for fundraising. Got that? Increased visibility is a well-meaning remedy. And like we mentioned, boards and bosses love the idea. It seems like an obvious and inexpensive solution. But until visibility is increased, there's little point in fundraising hard. Whew, they do not believe that because they say that's from a board's point of view. We can relax until staff gets this visibility thing figured out. Still, here is Tom Aherns' point. Chasing increased visibility rather than fundraising is the wrong direction to be going in. You thought increased visibility would raise money by itself? He says, this is his question, what are you, nuts? Increased invisibility is a byproduct, not a goal. Got that? Increased visibility is a byproduct, not a goal. It is so for every organization, for profit or non-profit. Okay? People assume that when an organization and its mission become better known, gifts automatically follow. Learn to fundraise. It's a money problem. You don't have anywhere near enough. And Tom says that you most likely never ever will. So, increase your fundraising rather than increase your visibility. Okay? Got that? Alrighty, back to the quiz and question number 10. It's true-false question. Okay? Appeals make money. Newsletters lose money. What do you think? True or false? Hey, the answer is false. And here are the notes and assumptions on that particular question and answer. Aherns says that years of meager returns show that printed charity newsletters are a waste of money. They are a cost, not a profit center. So goes the conventional thinking. But, he says, the experts say it's utterly wrong. Take, for example, the Nashville Rescue Mission, and it's a Christ-centered community seeking to help the hurting Middle Tennessee. And every dollar the mission spends on publishing and mailing its monthly newsletter yields almost $7 in gifts. Wow! Now that's what Tom Aherns calls a gilded return on investment of nearly 700%. How are they doing this? In 2013, the mission's newsletter alone accounted for $2 million in gifts. So, is this a fluke? Well, Tom Aherns says it's unusually high, but it's far from a fluke. Nashville is just another example of a competent donor newsletter built with the domain formula in mind. Okay? In Seattle's domain group in the 1990s proved that a nonprofit could make just as much money from a newsletter sent to current donors as it could from its appeals, assuming your nonprofit followed the rules they established. Here's what they found. Are you ready? This is the domain philosophy. Number one, competent printed newsletters sent to current donors raise $3.33 for every dollar spent on printing, postage, and other costs. Competent direct mail appeals sent out to current donors raise $3.22 for every dollar spent. In other words, well-done newsletters and well-done appeals have equal pulling power. So do as many of both as you can manage. So, what exactly is the domain formula, and how do you properly apply it? As it happens, there's a book about that. Instead of an app, there's a book about that. And in that book, you're going to find some surprises. Did you know, for instance, that mailing a properly done donor newsletter in an envelope typically raises far more money than sending the very same donor newsletter as a self-mailer? Can you believe this? And that data is backed up by Jeff Brooks. And so all of this information in the 20 questions by Tom Aherns has the backups and charts and graphs and telling you and showing you exactly how they arrived at these answers. Think we have time for one more question today? Let's take a look. Alrighty then, last question we're going to tackle today is number 11. Question 11. Which are better, stats or stories? Guess what the answer is here? I thought for sure it was going to be stories. But the answer is depends on your audience. Well, that makes sense, right? And here are the notes and assumptions about this question and answer. Some funding sources want stats. They need stats. And they have the paid staff to correctly interpret your stats. Governments and big foundations, they want stats. Hey, for your individual donors though, it's a very different story, all right? So then they go in this particular 20 questions article by Tom Aherns. I'm going to give you the link. They start getting a little technical, and they talk about the Harvard Business Review, and they talk about a 2014 article entitled "Why Your Brain Loves Good Storytelling." And in this article, they say that many business people have already discovered the power of storytelling in a practical sense. They have observed how compelling a well-constructed narrative can be. But recent scientific work is putting a much finer point on just how stories change our attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors. They did this, look, listen. They took blood draws before and after the narrative. And you know what they found? They found that character-driven stories do consistently cause oxytocin's synthesis. Can you believe that? And we all know that oxytocin is a neurochemical that motivates us to cooperate. And further, the amount of oxytocin released by the brain predicted how much people were willing to help others. For example, donating money to a charity associated with the narrative. Isn't this amazing? And stories do that. Statistics do not. In fact, according to the laboratory, the whole statistics versus stories debate is pointless. And yet, Tom says it's harder to kill than an urban legend. Maybe it all seems so obvious. Some people like stories, some people like numbers. Stories, numbers, even Stephen. But even Stephen is not true with your individual donors. Correctly, it should be stated. All individual donors like stories. I think they love stories. There's feel-good neurochemistry involved after all. And a few individual donors do like numbers too. Okay, well, this is good for today, right? Isn't this fun? Take the link, go to that link and get your own quiz. And I think you're going to want this to refer back to. And there's a lot of good stuff in there that I am just glancing over. Hey, it's Joy Olson here of Blockbuster Fundraising. I am so excited that you're here with me today, here with our fundraising tips. You can find more about us at blockbusterfundraising.com, joyolsongroup.com, and we've got hundreds of free fundraising videos on our YouTube channel, and that's also where we are housing our summer learning series. So hope to see you again very soon. Thanks so much for being here. Please share our story and share our tips with any fundraisers that you feel would really appreciate this extra knowledge and extra inspiration to take you to the greatest fundraising success ever in 2017 and beyond. Bye-bye. Thank you.